Good afternoon. My name is Diane Russell. I represent District 120 in the Maine House of Representatives. That's Mundray Hill in downtown Portland. I am pleased to be here with some supporters of LD1453. That would be an act to legalize and tax marijuana. First and foremost, LD1453 changes the paradigm of how we look at drug policy. It is time to see these policies through the lens of public health and not through the lens of the criminal justice system. We all recognize that our jails have become ad hoc sanatoriums for people with serious mental health and often addiction issues. It is time to start treating addiction as a mental health issue and not a criminal justice issue. Painkillers are the drug killing Maine people, many folks in my generation. So why are we spending about $26 million per year to root out, prosecute, and jail otherwise law-abiding citizens for the sale and possession of marijuana? That is money we could use to aggressively treat addiction and stop turning otherwise law-abiding citizens into criminals. This bill was designed to also protect children. Currently, we have absolutely no control over the marijuana market. As a result, not only is marijuana readily accessible to people ages 12 to 17, many are even selling it to their friends. Recently, over 82% of Maine high school seniors said that marijuana was either accessible or easily accessible. This bill creates a regulatory structure to limit access to marijuana for people under the age of 21. There are safe havens around schools, consequences for selling to a minor, and prohibitions against marketing to young people. Third, this bill would bring in an estimated $8.5 million in new sales tax revenue. This revenue does not account for the new income tax revenue that would be generated when black market operations come onto the books and officially above the table. Fourth, because we have not gotten out ahead of this issue, an entire black market has risen up to meet the demand of consumers. People talk about marijuana being a, quote, gateway drug. Marijuana isn't the gateway. The drug dealer is. And you'll hear from folks who can quantify that with firsthand experience. Finally, I have a responsibility to ensure our government does not infringe upon the rights of legal, responsible adults to do what they choose within the comfort of their own home, so long as it does not harm anyone else. This bill continues Maine's tradition of safety in the workplace and on the roads. But who are we to tell responsible adults what they can do when they're in the privacy of their own home? This is no longer a fringe issue. It is so central to many of the decisions that we make. While law enforcement officers are chasing marijuana growers with helicopters, no less, Mainers are becoming more and more addicted to painkillers. At the same time, we are considering drastic cuts to addiction services, potentially closing residential treatment centers throughout the state. This is an issue whose time has come. In fact, just this weekend, during the Republican presidential debates, two presidential candidates in the primary talked very eloquently about the need to regulate marijuana use. For decades, this has been viewed by policymakers as a, quote, fringe issue, the red-headed stepchild of the 60s. Too much is at stake to continue pretending this is just a joke from the latest Reefer Madness movie. It is absolutely irresponsible for lawmakers to continue burying their heads in the sand and pretending this issue will go away. Our children demand more, and we have an obligation to protect them. Today, you will hear from a variety of folks. You will hear from Alysia Melnick from the Maine Civil Liberties Union. You will hear from Jack Cole, who has a long-standing history as a narcotics officer. He actually worked to prevent drug trade money from going into terrorist organizations. You will hear from Denny Gallaudet, who is a former bank president, who is a retired superintendent, formerly in the Peace Corps, and who can speak quite eloquently about the need to address this issue. And finally, you'll hear from my good friend and my constituent, Seamus McGuire, a patient who without medical marijuana and access to medical marijuana would be probably not here today. So I want to thank you, and first I'd like to welcome Alysia Melnick. She needs to leave shortly. Of course, we will have a public hearing at 1 o'clock, and the work session will follow the public hearing. If you have any questions, you can ask me at the end.
As Diane said, my name is Alysia Melnick. I'm the Public Policy Counsel at the Maine Civil Liberties Union. And I'm here today in support of LD 1453, an act to legalize and tax marijuana. The MCLU has long supported laws and initiatives that would decriminalize the possession, cultivation, and use of marijuana by adults in our country. Prohibition just is simply not a sensible way to deal with marijuana use. It diverts important and scarce law enforcement resources away from serious crime. It undermines privacy rights. It contributes to incarceration and is ineffective in addressing marijuana access by youth. LD1453 will move us more towards a more rational, more effective approach to marijuana policy, and we certainly hope that the legislators in the Criminal Justice Committee will take it seriously and consider passing it. What we have realized over the course of time is that states around the country, including Maine, are beginning to acknowledge that criminalizing people who use marijuana or other recreational drugs is costly, inhumane, and is damaging to our society. This bill, again, represents smart policy that would regulate and tax marijuana just like alcohol and tobacco. LD1453 accepts and recognizes the following realities. Criminalizing adult use of marijuana is an unwarranted governmental intrusion into individual autonomy and choice. We're talking about choices made by adults about things that affect their body. It may not be your choice, but someone who wants to come home after a hard day's work and smoke some marijuana shouldn't be criminalized more than a person who wants to unwind with a cocktail. Further, marijuana is relatively safe when compared with other legal recreational drugs. It has, for example, never been known to cause death or bodily harm from overdose and causes no physical dependency. It's also not associated with life-threatening illnesses as are cigarettes, nor is it responsible for thousands of deaths per year in our country as alcohol is. Marijuana prohibition imposes arbitrary, often harsh penalties for private conduct for which no criminal penalty is appropriate. And from a Fourth Amendment perspective, the methods of enforcing marijuana prohibition often rely on entrapment, illegal searches, and other means that undermine people's Fourth Amendment privacy rights. We believe that Maine has the authority and should act to remove state criminal penalties from marijuana. From a legal standpoint, removing these state penalties for marijuana would not create any conflict with federal law and would put Maine out on the forefront of dealing with marijuana in a more humane and reasonable way. We think that it's important when considering this issue to keep in mind that the United States incarcerates far more people than any other country in the world. And nearly 500,000 people are behind bars on drug charges in our country, more than all of Western Europe incarcerates for all other offenses combined. And we also just spend exorbitant amount of money on incarceration at a time when our resources are really, really scarce and limited. Much of these dramatic increases over the years in arrests, prosecutions, and incarceration, and the vast fiscal and societal costs have been directed at penalizing nonviolent drug offenders, most of whom are passive users or minor dealers. In Maine in 2009, 74.3% of all adult drug arrests involved possession violations. And despite low risk to users and even some known benefits, marijuana-related crimes have played a huge part in this growth. In 2009, Maine arrested 2,900 people for simple marijuana possession. That is just simply unnecessary and again runs counter to effective policies around marijuana possession. These folks do not pose a substantial danger to our society. In fact, nearly 60% of those serving time in state prisons for drug offense had no history of violence or any significant selling activity. So it's time to get smart. It's time to create smart policies around marijuana use and to begin to regulate it just in the same way that we regulate tobacco and alcohol.